Wow.
A lot of people.
This is great. Well, thank you for everyone for coming. We're so happy to be here. We're so humbled to have this opportunity. First of all, thank you everyone watching on Salesforce Plus. Thank you everyone who joined us here today. And of course, thanks to Tableau for giving us this amazing opportunity to be on the big stage with you here today. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, we're honored. Thank you so much. How about some introductions? My name is Kevin Flerlage. This is my identical twin brother, Ken Flerlage. Together we run the website flerlagetwins.com. Hopefully you've seen it. We have about 450 blog posts, and I'd say 447 of them are about Tableau. We are consultants at Moxie Analytics, and we're both Hall of Fame Tableau Visionaries, 2 of 30 in the whole entire world, so very honored. We you.
Feel free to cheer as much as you want.
Yeah, cheer as much as you want, yeah.
We're okay with it.
We just might go 10 minutes long. But we are, at Moxie Analytics, we do training, community building, we do data governance, and of course, we do data visualization. Ken and I do all our work in Tableau. We don't use any of those other tools. It's all Tableau work. We build dashboards. We do something called Fractional Data Hero, where you can basically get us on your team for X number of hours a week. And we do a bunch of Tableau and data viz training. We have a beginner boot camp that's coming online, self-paced very soon. If you're interested, you can join the wait list now. Scan the QR code. I'll wait a second. Now I'll go. We do an advanced boot camp as well, where we get deep into Tableau. We got one of these in May, and then we do something called the softer side of data visualization, where we talk about soft skills, empathy, storytelling, data viz best practices. All right. If you've ever joined us at Tableau Conference before, you know that we have to get a selfie. So would you all like to be in a selfie with us? We're probably going to be able to get all of you in one picture, so act like you're the most excited you've ever been, and we'll get a picture together. All right. Excited, woo! All right, one more. All right,
thank you.
If you've joined us for Tableau Conference in the past, you also know that we like to tell silly stories to start off our presentation. So this one's really, really silly this year, guys. So. A couple years ago, we told a story of when we really got to know the co-founder of Moxie Analytics. So it was with Serena, and we were in Vegas, and we went for a long walk. And then this ended in what we call the infamous ham sandwich wipeout of 2022, where Serena literally stepped on a ham sandwich and fell and ended up like this in the middle of the street. She was okay. It was a very greasy, mayonnaise-laced sandwich. And then last year, we told the story of we had a few extra visitors go with us, and we were on the search for a drink, so we went for another walk, and we kept stopping into locations trying to find this particular drink. But what you might not know is that I hand drew every single one of these characters in PowerPoint. Yeah, not the best tool to be drawing images, but I drew every single character. You can see Serena coming together with our haircut. Now she has her haircut. So I drew every one of these characters in PowerPoint, and then I animated every one of these characters in PowerPoint. So you see the little squiggly lines, that became this, right? Okay, there's a point to this story. I probably, across those 2 presentations, spent about 400 hours. That's a real number, like way too much time. So it was a lot of work, and I spent a lot of time, and it meant a lot to me. I want to show a quick clip from last year's Tableau conference where we got interviewed by Tableau's Diane Bezzotta. And I'll show you what Ken thought.
All right, so if you didn't make it to their packed session here at Tableau Conference, Ken and Kevin have brought some bonus cool tips just for our online audience. So, Ken, where are we starting?
Well, Kevin spent so much time with his PowerPoint puppet show that we had to cut a bunch of my favorite PowerPoint puppet shows. PowerPoint puppet shows. PowerPoint puppet show.
So, we had just got done presenting, and I was on this, Tableau conference high, And then Ken's disgusting words came out. PowerPoint puppet show. 400 hours of work to be relegated to a PowerPoint puppet show. So, of course, my conference high went to deep, dark sadness. So I was in a dark place for quite some time. But I think I went to therapy for about 6.5 months, and she helped me work through a few things. And I decided, well, I'm not gonna let Ken's disgusting words dictate my happiness. And so instead of doing that, I thought maybe I'd just sort of lean into this whole puppet show thing.
Oh, God, no, don't.
And I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Keith Flerlage, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, Kevin. You not gonna say hi to Ken? I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. You still upset about that whole puppet show comment? Well, yeah. Ken Flerlage is a dummy.
Oh, that's not very nice.
That's not very nice. Well, Keith, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody here? Sure. My name is Keith Flerlage. I run a website. It's on the back of the shirt. It's called KenFlerlageIsADummy.com, where I have about 450 blog posts, and every single one of them is about how Ken Flerlage is a dummy. I can't believe I'm doing this. My latest blog post is entitled, Ken Flerlage, no wonder he's single and a dummy. Moxie Analytics is my sponsor, and I am a member of the MLS Hall of Fame. Major League Soccer? No. The Marionette League of Sheboygan. That's so dumb. All right, I think we should probably get to some tips. What do you say? All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, Kevin. Bye, dummy. Bye. Keith Flerlage, everybody.
Yeah, that was nice.
Cannot believe we just did that. All right, we're gonna get to some cool tips in Tableau. We're gonna do some tips, some tricks, some techniques, a variety of stuff. We named it this so we can just kind of do whatever the heck we want. We're gonna move fast. It is being streamed live. It's on demand at Salesforce as well. And then all the content related to this you can get at flerlagetwins.com/coolstuff2025 and use that QR code. We do wanna say a couple of thank yous. Most of the tips are ours, but we did pull some tips from other folks, so we want to say thank you specifically to those folks, and then this amazing community where we've learned and grown over these many years. With that, I say we get started.
Let's do it. All right, I am gonna start with some cool font stuff. So, in addition to being data visualization people, we're also kind of designers as well. So I don't know about you, but I like to mix up my fonts a little bit. And I'm super excited that because in 2024.3, Tableau introduced support for a whole bunch of new fonts. So here are the fonts. I think there's 8 of them. So in addition to the existing Tableau family of fonts, we have all these new fonts that we can use. But I do want to sort of talk a little bit about these and warn you about when and how to use some of those, because these use 2 different types of figures for numbers: proportional figures and tabular figures. So here we have Poppins on the left, that's a proportional figures. Lato on the right is tabular. And do you notice anything that looks a little weird with those numbers when you read them in the columns? Yeah, so if we just sort of draw some lines, we can see those tabular figures, all those digits are the same width, right? And you might wonder why this is an issue or why we should even be thinking about this. Well, remember, when we're visualizing data, we're using these pre-attentive attributes to pull insights from that information, right? And one of those is width or length, right? And when we use a bar chart, we're looking at the length of that bar chart and seeing the differences. So what happens when you're using these proportional figures is your eyes sort of zoom in on those and you sort of short circuit your pre-attentive attributes. You kind of start to wonder, which of these numbers is larger? And I remember the first time I used Poppins in a table, my mind went, oh, that one number's gotta be bigger. There's something wrong with my sort, right? So all I wanna say here is just when you're using one of these new fonts, be careful if you're putting data in a table or in columns. try to use a tabular font. Otherwise, use a proportional font all you want, right? Okay, so let's just talk quickly about which of these are safe. Of course, the Tableau family of fonts is safe across all platforms. You can use that wherever you want. These new fonts highlighted here are, you can use them within cloud safely. Anybody will automatically get that font sort of installed on their computer. It doesn't have to be installed. Things called web-safe fonts, you'll hear this term, that those are not truly safe in Tableau. So be careful with that. In order for them to be truly, for you to use them, they need to be part of the Tableau Cloud sort of standard, as well as installed on end users' machines. And then server's a little bit different because you have control over what you can install. Basically, if you want a font to be safe there, you need to install it on the server and install it on your end users' computers. All right, so let's do some font tips. I've got a couple of font tips here for you. So it might be a little hard to see on screen here, but those two second columns are slightly different color, a little bit lighter than the other. And it seems like this always happens when you build out a table in Tableau. So historically, what I would do is I'd right-click and format and individually change each of these columns, right? I'm sure everybody's done that at some point. But let me show you a quicker way to do this. If we go to Format and then Font, we have some different font settings. So if we change this pane to this sort of orangish color, that's going to change our measure values. Let's undo that. If we change the header, then it's going to change sort of everything else, right? Anything on rows and columns, as well as our headers at the top. Of course, if we change tooltip, it'll change the color of the tooltips and then the titles. But if we just want everything to be the same color, all we have to do is go to this worksheet, change it all to one color, and everything synchronizes to that black. Super simple and quick. All right, this is a problem that's been driving me crazy for a long time. You build a highlight table, and for some reason, this text is dark on that dark background. And has anyone ran into this here? Okay, I see lots of hands.
Whole place.
So I have spent a whole bunch of time trying to fix this problem, and I'm gonna walk you through all the things I did to try to fix it, right? So, first of all, I want to check to make sure my color is automatic. So if I click the label card, it is set to automatic, so that should trigger Tableau to change that to a lighter color when it's dark in the background. That's not working. Another thing that often happens is if your text is too big, it sort of bleeds out of the cell and it doesn't know how to color it. So let's just make our text a little bit smaller and make sure that that's not the problem. That didn't fix it, so we still have this issue. So let's try something else. If we go to Format, there's this menu item, Clear Worksheet Formatting. That should fix it, right? Let's click that. Okay, we got white text now, but it also changed all my other formatting, all my my lines, my grid lines, my bold headers, my alignment, everything got wiped out. So I don't want to do that. I'm too lazy to go through and fix all that again. So instead, let's go to format our workbook, and we've got some font settings. So what's actually happening here is that we've overridden the color of this worksheet font. When you do that, it sort of breaks these highlight tables. So since we've overridden that, you would think this little reset to defaults button would fix it, right? Yeah. Let's try it. Nope. It changes all my fonts back to Tableau, but it still doesn't fix that yellow or that white font, right? But let's just do something weird. I'm gonna change this color to this orange, and now I'm gonna hit Reset Redefaults, and for some reason that fixes it. I don't know why. But again, remember, I'm lazy, and this is still set all my fonts back to that Tableau default font. And I don't want that, so let's undo that. Let's try something different. You see this little circle, this little bullet point next to that? That means I've overridden something in that font. So theoretically, I can click on that, reset that to default, it would fix it, right? Well, it didn't do anything. So I don't really know what the point of that is, but that little orange font thing worked a minute ago. Maybe we could try that, make that orange. Now let's click that button. I don't know why it does that, but if you get stuck with a highlight table like that, go and change that color to something else, click that little button, and it should get you back to normal. All right, turn. All right, we're gonna do a couple of cool technique stuff.
So a few months ago, I created a visualization about the Saturday Night Live hosts that have hosted 5 times. And if we zoom in here, you can see I sort of labeled this chart with these sort of offsetting labels, just because there wasn't enough room to properly label them. I did this and cheated, and I did it in 2 different sheets. I know nobody likes it when we do that in Tableau. So I figured, let's take a look at this chart and see if we can build this in 1 sheet. And I'll show you what the problem is. We have this bar chart, and we have these labels that are just on top of each other, right? We can see Scarlett Johansson's cut off, John Mulaney's on 2 different rows. It just looks really, really bad. So we can, in fact, do this. And what we're gonna do is something like this, right? I call this the variable offset label chart. It is the worst name for a chart ever, but you get the point. All right, so if we zoom in, you're gonna, what I should note that these little leader lines at the bottom are just really thin bar charts, okay? So, and when we zoom in, it's gonna look like this, where we don't have this sort of overlap. So let's build this. I got a couple of calculations here. I'm almost 50, so I better put my readers on here. Cheers for 50. All right, so I'm gonna first start off with an index function. This is gonna allow us to just count these bars. If I put this on label, it's just gonna count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we're gonna use index with something called modulo. Anybody ever used modulo before? All right, modulo. Modulo is gonna allow us to use index to figure out if it's odd or even. Modulo, if I do modulo 2, basically what it's saying is, take this number, divide it by 2, and whatever the remainder is my answer, right? So 4 modulo 2, remainder is 0, so the answer is 0. 5 modulo 2, the remainder is 1, so the answer is 1. So if I take my index, modulo 2, it's gonna tell me if it's odd or even. A 1's gonna be odd, anything else, or 0 is gonna be even, right? So if I put that on my label, we now see odd, even, odd, even. Okay, we're getting there, we're close. And now what I'm gonna do is figure out what the label position is. Remember, the bars, they're just little thin bars that point downward. And so I'm just gonna offset one. Odds are gonna be -1, evens are gonna be -3. So let's put this out on my view. Let's do the dual axis here. Let's synchronize, and then I want to get rid of this header, and I'm going to have to click that twice for some reason. And then I got to get rid of that stinking measure names thing. All right, so now you can kind of see where we're going with this. Let's go to the second one. I'm going to make it really thin. Let's get rid of all the labels here. I'm going to get rid of these headers. And then I'm going to take the first and last name calculations. Let me get on the proper, and we'll drag that here. It's gonna break temporarily. We just need to fix this table calculation. I'm just gonna edit it, include first name and last name, and now we have that variable offset bar chart. So if you're not aware, Alec Baldwin has hosted more times than anybody else on Saturday Night Live history with 17. But what if Alec Baldwin hosted every show for the next 5 years? Highly unlikely, but possible. He's on there a lot. So your chart turns into this, and you can see at the bottom we now have that same problem. Why is that? Well, because I hard-coded those numbers of -1 and -3, so we can absolutely fix that. Instead of the -1 and -3, I'm gonna take a window max. Window max is gonna get me that 117 figure, right? So I'm just gonna take the window max, and I'm gonna divide by some random numbers. I'm just trying to get that sort of 1-3 ratio, so I got -20 and -8, -6. We just divide that window sum by that number, and then that'll allow my chart to grow as we use different figures or as our data grows. So I'm gonna go here and replace with this window max. Let's get rid of that header again. And then I need to edit my table calculation again. There's 2 table calculations in here, the index and the window max, so I gotta do both of them. And now we can see the window max is now offsetting those bars. But if I get rid of this, exclude it, you can see it's adjusting as our data adjusts, right? By the way, I like to do this with dotted lines. We use bars initially, but if we use the measure names and measure values trick to draw a line, and then we make that line dotted, we can use dotted lines down here instead of bars to do those sort of leader lines. Okay, let's do something else. This is off-brand Rocky, by the way. ChatGPT helped me make off-brand Rocky. We're gonna look at the percentages of revenue by the Rocky movies, right? Okay, so we've got all the different Rocky movies, we have the revenue, and we have a percentage. So if we were wanted to show the percentage of revenue, how might we show that? With a pie, right? Yeah. Well, first off, pies have lots of problems, right? I mean, first off, that color doesn't really go with the whole Rocky theme. Then the labeling's tough. The slices are hard to compare, you know, much harder than with bars. But there are some good things about the pies. Like if I asked you to estimate what the percentage of revenue was attributed to the blue slice, you probably guess around 24% without much work, even without the label. So pie charts have some good things. They really show that it's a part-to-whole visualization. But it's not very accurate, so maybe we turn it into a bar chart, right? But again, bar charts are really precise. We can make those measurements really easy. But if I were to remove those percentages, you could probably not estimate those percentages very well. And there's nothing about this that screams part to whole. So something I created a while back is what I call having your pie and eating it too, is this sort of combination of pie chart and bar chart where we can really understand that it's a part the whole, right? We can see the individual percentage, and then we can get the, that precision with the bar chart. So let's build this real quick. Let's hope I don't screw this one up because it's got a few steps. I'm gonna take this bar chart and just duplicate it. I'm gonna change this here to, we're gonna draw this pie chart now. I'm gonna do a quick table calculation and do percent of total. And let's just move this down here. I'm gonna make it discrete. And let's do some formatting. Probably could have had Ken's help on this part. Percentage, okay, so we got this percentage here. And then I'm gonna change this to a pie mark. And it's just this big red circle. Why is that? Well, first off, I'm gonna change this to a percent of total as well. So why is this just this big red circle? Why is it not showing a pie? Well, right now it's just representing the whole thing for just the Rocky movie. What I really need is it to be two different slices, right? I need this 23.7%, and then I need what's left over, the 76.3%, right? How do I get that? Well, I can get that by taking 1 minus this percentage, right? So I've just taken 1 minus this. All I did was take 1 and drag this percentage in. So this is 1 minus the percentage. We'll get there. So next thing I'm gonna do is put measure values on angle. I'm gonna drag this down so that we have the actual percentage and the 1 minus the percentage. Let's get rid of everything else. Let's put measure names on color. You can start to see some things happening. Again, Ken said I should call this section Fun with Table Calcs because everything I'm doing is with table calcs. And all of a sudden, we see some things happening. And let's edit our colors. Make this red. Let's put a border. Let's put a border around it. Now we have our pie charts. Then we can come to this sheet. Let's throw out a horizontal container. Let's put this one in there, put this one in there, hide this, hide this, hide this, and we now have our pie and able to eat it too. Yo, audience, we did it. Your turn.
You're just trying to embarrass me today, right? All right. So let's do some cool random stuff. Just a bunch of quick, relatively quick random tips here. So everyone go to Devs on Stage yesterday? The ability to edit color palettes directly in the tool is gonna be great. Until then, we still have to edit this preference file. It looks something like this. It's basically just XML, right? And so here are 3 color palettes in this XML, each of the different types of color palettes. So each of these has a name and a type, right? And that name is what you choose when you choose a color palette. But has anyone ever tried putting a palette in here like this with no name and no type? Have any idea what that's gonna do? But just to give you a picture, these are Moxie's brand colors. I've created this in my palette, and Here's a bar chart, and I want to use this color. So typically, if I would have put like region on color, I'm going to get Tableau's default colors. We recognize all these colors, right? But with this palette in there, with no name and no type, let's see what happens if we drag out that region field now. It's going to default to those colors. So if you want to have a default set of colors, create it with no name and no type. I will warn you, it'll also use it for every other type of color as well. So a little bit weird, but it's great if you have some brand colors that you want to use. So Kevin just mentioned dotted lines a minute ago. So here we have a chart showing, it's a dual axis chart showing sales versus targets. So relatively recently, we now have this ability to change the line type to a dotted line, right? So I like when I'm doing a target line like this to have a dotted line so I can really clearly see which is which. But what I also like to do sometimes is add some color. So in this case, what I want to do is show color to indicate whether the sales has met that target, right? So if my sales is more than my target, I want one color, otherwise another color. So I create a calculated field like this that just says if sales is greater than my sum of sales is greater than my target, 1, otherwise -1, and then I'll drop that on the color card and my dotted line goes away. Anyone ever deal with this? It's a relatively new feature, so maybe you haven't run into it yet. So what's actually happening with Tableau is this is an aggregate calculation. For some reason, you can't do the dotted lines. In fact, just to prove that to you, this is all grayed out now just because that's on there. So here's what I think is kind of a cool little trick for getting sort of a pseudo dotted line. So instead of the dual axis here, we're just going to use measurement values and then have those two measures on our view. We're going to drag target up to create a dual axis here. Let's dual axis these and synchronize. And now let's drag that color that met the target to our color card for measure values. Now, of course, that second axis is just on top of the other one, so that's why just the target line is just as black. But what we'll do now is this does not have anything on color, so we're just going to change this to dotted line and make this white. And if we make the size a little bit bigger, you get a pseudo dotted line. And if you want to make it a little bit, thank you. And if you make it a little bit smaller, you get this sort of chain link looking thing. So if you really want to create a dotted line with an aggregate calc, you can do that using this little trick. All right, so I'm going to convince you of something here. Horizontal and vertical containers are the same thing. Anyone disagree with me? Somebody disagree.
We're getting some head nods.
Yeah. They're the same thing. There's no difference between them. And I'm going to prove it to you. So over here in the panel, we're going to drag out a horizontal container. All right, we'll go over to the layout. See, it's a horizontal container. We all agree? Horizontal container, right? Somebody's shaking their head over there. All right. So we're going to drag out a blank into this, and I'm just going to color that blank dark color like that. Oh, not the border. Let's do this orange color. All right. Horizontal container still. That blank is in the horizontal container. I'm going to drag out another blank, and what is it doing? It's letting me drop this vertically. Let's go over to layout again. My horizontal container is now a vertical container, right? Now, from here on out, if I drag things, I can only do it vertically. It's set as a vertical, but if I now remove this blank again, I can now do whatever I want, right? I can go back to horizontal. It's now a horizontal container. So the point is, just grab one of those containers, put it out there, tile those first two objects. It's only set after you drag that second object in there. I'm glad y'all like that one. All right, so here's a table here. We have some different information on it, including this date. I don't know about you, but when a date just says null, I don't like that. My end users don't know what that means, right? We know we're data people, but my end users don't understand that. So what I'd like to do is just alias this value, right? So what do you do when you want to do an alias? You just right click and you choose, you can't do an alias with a date. So what I have historically done in the past is basically create a string, right? So we'll basically do something like this to create month, month, day, day, year, year, and then we use that instead. The problem is this sorts alphabetically. It's now a string, so it's going to sort by the month and then the day, right? And only Americans use this format anyway, right? So instead, maybe we'll just do year, 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 month, month, day, day. That will sort okay, but I just really want this to just be a date. I don't want to use a string. So here's a cool trick I learned from Fuj Khan. And what we'll do is take that date. We're going to temporarily change it to a string. So now it's a string. Because it's a string, we can do an alias. I'm just going to do NA, or actually just leave it as a blank, right? Now we change it back to a date, and it keeps the alias in there automatically. And now we can hide those. All right, so one more on this one here. So I love that Tableau gives you these little buttons for sorting, right? So I like my end users to be able to go in and sort by the different measures and things like this, but you'll have to tell me if you run into this problem. I'm clicking on profit to sort it, and it's not doing anything. Have you ever run into this? I know you've run into this, right? So let's just scroll down and see what's going on. If I go far enough, I see Harry Olson. Harry Olson has 5 customer IDs. So now with him in view, let's click this button and we'll see what's happening. So it's doing this nested sort. Within each of these customers, it's just sorting that customer ID. So I can see now it's descending, now it's ascending, and then it'll go back to alphabetical, right? So what we need to do if we want to make sure we can sort the entire table in sort of the same way as you would Excel, we need to make sure there's a value that is unique across, a column that's unique across all values. So what we're going to do is create sort of a fake unique ID. I know in my data that the combination of customer name, ID, and segment is going to be a unique value. So we'll just sort of concatenate those together. I'm just separating them with these bars. We'll drag this onto our view in front. We now get an individual row for each one. We can right-click this and hide that header. And if we scroll up, now we click this, drum roll, it does that sorting exactly the way we want. A lot less painful and really more intuitive for our end users. We have anyone from France here?
France?
I know there's some French people here, right? Yes, okay. So I have to give credit to Yovel Dutel. He runs the Paris user group. He did all this study and found all these hidden functions. So you've probably used like random before. That's a hidden function. Well, he found like dozens of other hidden functions. So I'm going to show you two cool little tips using some hidden functions that Yovel found. So here we have some dice rolls. We have 9 players. They each rolled a 20-sided die. And what I want to do, and each of those players' values are they're a separate measure, as you can see here. So what I want to do is just find the maximum, the winning roll, right? So to do that, we'd use the max function, not the aggregate function, just the max. It finds a max of multiple values. And so logically, maybe we just try to add player 3 to this. But Tableau doesn't like that. We get an error. Max only allows for two parameters. So what we have to do is all these nested maxes, right? We have to put another max here, like that, and then we'd have to do another one and another one and another one. The function, the calculated field ends up looking like this. You don't want to do that, right? That's too much work. So, introducing, or Yovel introduced, greatest. It's a hidden function, and you can probably guess what it's going to do, or what it's going to allow you to do. Player 3, no error. The ending function looks like this. Much cleaner, much easier, and just to prove that it does the same thing, we'll put those both on here. We can see we get the same exact value.
That's the greatest tip.
Yeah.
No?
This text is a little small here, but
He just ignored me.
I wasn't listening.
I said it's a great tip. Okay.
Who loves regex? Oh, come on. Nobody loves it.
Nobody loves it.
Nobody loves it. Again, the text is kind of small here, but I've got a list of names and email addresses. But you'll notice the email addresses, a lot of them are not valid formats, right? An email address is basically a string, then an @ symbol, and then another string, and then we gotta have that period in there, and then another string, right? So if you wanna, so what we would just wanna do is create a calculated field that checks to see if these are valid email addresses. So here's what we would do in regex. Now, I know most of you don't understand that. I think I saw Don Wise over there. He understands this. Somehow he understands. This makes no sense to me. This is hieroglyphics to me. So I mean, I can go and look this up and try it, and it does work, but it's really confusing. But Yovel found this great function, like. It's a simple pattern matching. We're just saying, find anything that's got a string, then an at, then a string, and then a period, and then another string. And again, just to prove that this does the same thing, we'll drag it out onto our view, and we get the exact same values from both of those. All right, I have one more for you here. We've got some data here, and we can just see the dates just showing the data. I know my data, though. I might start off allowing my users to sort of filter on this, right? So we have a range filter. We show that filter, and we can see the start and the end, right? But you're working with business data. Data is changing every day. You're probably refreshing that data on a scheduled basis. And I know my data is updated through the end of March, but it's only showing through the 24th, right? So let's refresh this extract here. And so I refresh it, and it doesn't update my data. But if we notice what happened with our filter, it sort of pushed that end date, and I have to come in here and change that, right? So from an end user perspective, this data is just going to stick to where you published it. And every time they come in here, they got to go drag that date, right? Everyone has dealt with this problem at some point. So there's a couple different ways to deal with this. One is we could use a discrete filter. So instead of doing the range, we could do individual dates and then just choose this use all option. We can show that filter. And now when we refresh this extract here, it automatically updates. So that kind of works, but then people can check off individual dates. I don't want that. I don't want to have to worry about that. I want them to just specify the first date and the end date. So how do we typically solve this? Anybody? Parameters, right? Yep. So I create two parameters. You can see my date start, my date end. But we want to make sure that those are updating automatically. So enter dynamic parameters, right? We create a function like this using a fixed LOD. We got to make it a viz independent, and we use a fixed LOD to do that. So we're getting the latest date in our data. And then, of course, in the parameter, we set this to use that date when the workbook opens or the data source refreshes, right? So, and then of course, we also have to do this one last thing and create a filter, calculate a field that says, do we keep the dates in between those parameters? So it's kind of a lot of work, but we can get it to work. And of course, when we refresh it at this point, that date automatically updates, and that works really well. So this is probably the solution you've been using. I always use this solution, but I recently found this really, really easy trick for doing this. So let's go back to our range filter. So instead of doing our ranges, let's go over to special and just choose all dates. Now watch when we refresh this extract here. Watch that filter over there on the right and watch our data. Automatically updates, shows all your data. And you don't have to worry about all that stuff with parameters. Just make sure before you publish, you make that change because it can switch back and forth a little bit. All right, that's all for me.
What?
Higher ed.
How cool was that last tip? Ken didn't let you all clap.
That's that.
I thought it was super cool. All right, I'm gonna do some cool random stuff as well. Let's get my glasses. All right, so we have this table. Yeah, it's a table, but it's this hierarchy, category, region, segment, and then we have a bunch of measures. And to help me understand this data a little bit better, I think I'm gonna add some subtotals. So I'm gonna go up to totals and add subtotals. And isn't this easier to read now? Yeah. Did you know that you can control what appears in the subtotal? If you just right-click on that pill, I can take that one out. I can take that one out. I can take this one out. And now I just see a subtotal at the category level. So you can completely control what shows in your subtotals. All right, this is something that I see all the time. It drives me crazy. So I've got this nice bar chart showing sales by month, right? Labels are aligned, looks good, but I'd like to add a trend line. It's a discrete date on columns. If I right-click and hit trend line, show trend lines, wah, wah, right? I can't add it. And the reason is because this thing is discrete, okay? So let's make this continuous, right? And then this weird thing happens where your bars get really thin, so let's make them a lot bigger. That's the biggest I can make them. All right, so let's go to fixed. And since we're talking months, I'm just gonna type 25 in here, 25 days. And then I don't know what this is all grayed out. But we'll see my labels now start at the beginning of the bar, which is just weird, right? Like January out here and doesn't even have a value. So the bar starts here, and that's where my label starts. But we just saw this little thing here that says alignment, and it says left, but why can't I change it to anything other than left? Well, I will tell you that you can, in fact, do that. In order to do that, this up here needs to be an exact date, right? So if we want to look at this at the month, we can create a calculation that just aggregates the order date up to the month. Then what I'm gonna do, another little trick, you can right-click and drag. It'll give you this context menu. I'm just gonna drop that over and pick this continuous one here. Hit OK. All right, so it looks exactly the same. But now if I go to size, guess what's available? Now I can just hit center and we center those up. And you can add your trend line. I learned this tip from the Sarah Bartlett. I don't know where she's at. I think she learned it from Yvette Kovach. This is a weird one, but I love it. So we have this chart. We're just looking at sales by subcategory, and then we have these scatter plots. So because of the scatter plots, I really need to color by subcategory. But I am the category manager for accessories, so I'm really only interested in accessories. So I'm interacting with this visualization, and I kind of like it to just sort of highlight just accessories and keep this sort of faded, muted color for all the other ones. I've done this a bunch in the past. So what we have to do is, maybe we click here and then we come here, and then we have to like color pick everything. Let's color pick appliances. I'm just gonna do them all and make you wait here. Right, we can just keep doing this and doing this and doing this, right? And then we get these muted colors. Or we can do something totally different. We can just come up here to accessories, right click, assign highlight colors to palette, and look at our color palette now. It's all faded. Really, really weird, but look at our whole dashboard now. This color palette has been applied with these muted colors for everything other than the thing you selected. All right, the next one comes from Jeff Schaefer. This is one of my favorites here.
Do you think that last one was a weird one?
Huh?
Yeah, they think the last one was a weird one.
So this is just a sort of hierarchical table. We just got country, region, and state province, but we get that ABC. We gotta get rid of that stinking ABC, right? So how do we get rid of the ABC? Well, what I used to do is just change it to a polygon mark. It disappears, right? But did you know that if you use polygon marks and you're trying to use animation in a dashboard, a polygon mark will break your animation. It will not work, right? Or any of those transitions. So I don't do that anymore. So maybe I can just use text. I'll just do an inline calculation of quote, quote, and then I'll throw that on text, and then it disappears. But we still have this weird ability to like click on this thing that doesn't exist. And it even shows in the tooltip, not that we couldn't get rid of that. So I don't like that one. Maybe we just make it a circle mark. We got a circle, and then we just reduce the opacity to 0. Well, then I can still click on said circle mark, right? So how many 40-year-olds do we have here? How many people are in their 40s? Woo! How many people remember the video game Contra? Yeah. You remember the cheat code, Contra cheat code? It was up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start. You got 99 men and you and your buddy just like slay the game. Well, did you know that there's a Tableau cheat code for the ABC? It's right, 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 long hold left, 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 left. All right, you don't believe me. All right, how we're gonna do it is I'm gonna hit the control on PC. I'm gonna hit the control key and do a right arrow 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to grab it here, drag it all the way to the left. It's still there. But then I'm going to hit the Control and hit left 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's gone. So weird. You go to Format, Cell Size, and go to Text Cell. It will come back. Let's do it one more time, just because I think it's fun. Right, with the Control right. Let's drag this all the way, if I can grab it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So get rid of the ABC without any of those other tricks. There we go. All right. All right. I call this, well, let's talk measure names, measure values. Anytime you create this sort of measure names, measure values table, okay, you might like, drag out subcategory, and then you've got to find measure names, and I put that on text, and then it's just all crammed on top of each other. And then we drop measure names up here. And then, but I only want a few things, so then I got to come through here and get rid of the things that I don't want. Okay, all right, you've seen enough of that. All right, that's one way of creating a names and measure values table. Another way is to put that subcategory out, and then we can put one of our measures out on the ABC, and then we can drop another one on top of that, and it'll start building this out. So a little more intentional, right? So we can just build this out that way. But I call this one the quickest table ever. What we're gonna do is just select each of these and hit the return key, and we'll create the quickest measure names and measure values table ever, just by hitting the enter key very, very quickly. We're gonna end a little bit early, looks like today.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, we never end early.
Rare for us.
Yeah. And we're gonna talk, the last tip is about formatting parameters. So how many times you got 2 parameters on a dashboard, right? You see one here in the white background and one here on this purple background, but of course my header is so dark you can't read it on the purple background. So what do? Right? We try to edit that. So let's format that parameter. Maybe I'll make the background purple and it changes both of them to purple, right? That's not very good. Or change them both to white, it changes them back to white. Or we try to just change the header text to a different color. Let's change the header text to white, and it changes them both to white. Does it drive anybody crazy? Have you ever figured out a solution? Well, in the new version of Tableau, guess what? If you right-click, go to Format, look at this window, format this parameter or all parameters. How about we just format this parameter only, change this to white, and we can now format them individually. Oddly, we ended early, which we never do. So we appreciate you all coming. Again, this is on demand on Salesforce Plus. You can get all the content at flerlagetwins.com/coolstuff2025 using that QR code. And we're going to be in the community area. If you didn't catch it, we did an interview with Tableau yesterday. It'll be on Salesforce Plus as well. We did some bonus tips, so you can check that out and some Q&A. And we're going to be in the community area later, about 12:45. If anybody wants to come out, say hello. We'd love to meet you.
If you have any questions,
And if you have questions, and yes, right. Thank you for coming.
Thank
We
you so much,
really
everyone.
appreciate it.